Hello and welcome to part 2 of episode 1, season 2 of Webflow and Code. In today's episode we're going to be looking at how to debug the code we write and the CSS that we write in the browser. If you don't know what CSS looks like, in part 1 that's where we cover the ins and outs of CSS. Welcome to Webflow and Code. This is the series where I teach you the underlying code you're writing in Webflow in order to build better Webflow websites for more people. I wanted to do this episode first because in the previous series we spoke more about some of the things you don't see going on under the hood when you're creating Webflow projects and certain concepts to understand that we can then transfer and, like I say, build better Webflow projects. This series I'm going to focus more about actually writing code. Now, the caveat to that is that there's a lot of code you can write in Webflow that doesn't show itself in the browser, in the IDE, in the editor. So we need to be able to work with the code that we're writing, and the best way we can do that is by publishing our websites and then inspecting the code and making those changes and then transferring those changes back into our code, back into our Webflow project. So what I've got is just a basic website here, and if we go into my project settings and in my custom code, I've created a style here with a class of red making the background red. So jumping right back in, if I click on my heading here and give it a class of red, you can see that there's no changes that have happened, and the only way we can actually see those changes if we publish this website and view it, you'll see that now we've got the heading. So and this is a very basic change. This is probably something we wouldn't do in code, but just to help you understand what's going on, here it is. So how do we now start playing with this? Well, most browsers come with web development tools that you can use. Safari, I think you need to enable it in preferences, but in something I'm using Chrome here, or Firefox, or any other browser, you can right click and just click inspect or inspect element. And what that will do, whatever element you right click on, it should pop up in the browser on the right hand side here. If it doesn't, again, often browsers have like a select element tool, and you can see that if I had more elements, you'd be able to select those things. But then if it's not selected, then you can just do that, and again, it will make it appear on the right hand side. Now you can move that. You can dock it to the bottom. You can dock it to the left, to the right, or you can make it pop out. Now I like it on the right just because I can change the width of my browser like this and quite easily and still see that code. But there are some instances where I want it on the bottom or even popped out. Other things you can do is you've got a device thing here where if I click on the device selector, and then I can actually choose some devices. Now this isn't actually that device, and that there are certain benefits to actually testing your website on the devices, but at least this gives you some form of some idea of what your website will look like in those different browsers. So there you go, and you can rotate that and all the rest of it. So that's another helpful tip on the inspect element. Now it's really important to know that the changes we make in the browser here, they're not affecting the website. There are a lot of hacks and a lot of people get scared about things they see in the console. You've got errors here and things like that, or warnings rather. There's lots of stuff that's going on that could seem quite scary and intimidating, which is another reason why I'm doing this episode, just to make us feel a bit more comfortable with it. It's not affecting the real website. It's just in its appearance. So there's a lot of benefits to that, and we'll get into now. But it's important to know that this doesn't affect the website. So jumping into our element that we've created, you can see that heading that I created, I gave it a class of red. You can see all that information here. And then down the bottom here, you can see that there's the class red, and there's the background of red that I wrote in the code. Now, like I say, we can do whatever we want here, and this is CSS. If you don't know what CSS is, it's the language that enables us to style our websites And it's what Webflow is doing under the hood when we're selecting these properties in the style panel on the right hand side. This is what it's writing under the hood. This is what the CSS that it's writing. And you'll be familiar with some of the terms that you'll see in that inspector on the right hand side. Some things like background color or display flex or align items and things like that. That's all terminology that is derived from CSS. The only one that I've seen that isn't taken directly from CSS is font color. There is no font color property in CSS. Instead, it's just color. And I remember when I was starting out, it would always confuse me. I would always try to do font size and font color, but it is color. And we can put, you can name colors here, or you can just put hex values, something like, I'm just gonna make this up, whatever. There we go. So you can see that I've changed the color there, and then you can untick that, or we can get rid of it. So there we go. That's kind of the basics on the inspect panel. Now the way I intend on us using this is, again, we're going to be writing code that we don't immediately see in the editor of Webflow. So I would expect that we would be writing code in here. Let's make that 50%. Let's give it a height of 200 pixels. And what I would then expect us to do then is you can copy that. We'll flick back to Webflow, go into our code, and then paste that code back in to there. And we can make those changes. And then if we go back to Designer, again, you don't see it. Publish selected domains. And without any of the edits that we've made, they're already there. So that's kind of how I intend on using it. Some other cool quirks that you can use the inspect panel. This can do a lot. It's very, very powerful, and we'll probably just build on it as we learn to use it. Is you can actually select this here, and we have a color picker in our browser, and this can go on any color. So if you're interested, if you saw a color that you liked on another website, you can then, or if you could color pick that and find the hex value. So right now that is FF0100. Another interesting thing that you can do with this inspect panel is that if you see a website that there's something on there that you really like the look of, or it looks really cool, if you inspect it, let's just go on BBC News, let's go on their website. If there's something you like, now this is a more advanced website, so it's going to look pretty scary, but if I say I like the layout of this little area here, then you can inspect it and you can start to look at how these individual sections are made. So we've got a link here, and you can then start to pick apart certain stylistic properties of that area, and start to pick apart how it was built. We'll get into some of this stuff that you can see with the WebKit-box. We'll get into what that means and why some of it's crossed out. But at the end of the day, you can you'll see things that you recognize, like flex and all the rest of it. So you can actually start to pick apart other people's websites and learn from them and bring it into your Webflow project. Sometimes you might need to write some code, because like I say, not all code is available inside of the style inspector in Webflow. So we just need to bear that in mind. Sometimes we might need to write that code. The other thing we can look at is, if we look on the right hand side here, you can actually start to see the actual computed properties of the website. Now, one obvious one will be the font. So if we look at font family, we can see they're using Helvetica. If you see a font you like on a website, you inspect it and come here to the style inspector. You can actually see what font they're using, and then go and search that and use it for your own website. So again, it's just a useful tool to pick apart existing websites, to learn from, and to borrow ideas from. So that's a little look inside the inspect panel in the browser. We're going to be using the inspect panel a lot, so I just wanted this episode so that we're not overwhelmed, and we kind of know our way around it, and we know what we're going to be doing with it, and this will set the precedence for the rest of the series. So if you have any questions, do let me know, and until next time, happy no coding.